we'll cut across to our studio guest who's joining us, Mr. Mukesh Bhutani, Managing Partner, BMR Legal. Mr. Bhutani, we were speaking earlier in the day as well. Thanks so much for joining us here in the WION studios. We spoke about structural reforms with Mr. Baliga. One key structural reform that you're expecting or looking forward to?
As a taxman, I think it's tax administration. So you've seen the new Income Tax Act 2025, which is going to come into effect from April 1, 2026. However, the enabling rules to support that has not come. That's outside the purview of the parliamentary process and the budget, but I think there was an expectation that the announcement would be made, because come April 1, you and I will be guided by those subordinate legislations, number one. Number two, I think there has been a fair bit of public consultation after the Select Committee of the Parliament took inputs on the new income tax bill of 2025, which got converted into an act. I would anticipate a whole lot of tweaking, changes, maybe not relevant to the common man, but relevant to businesses from a clarity and a certainty point of view. You could see that as well. Number three is something, again, you'll not see in the budget, but you could see very well by way of announcements. For example, if you look at the trend of personal tax collections, that has gone up. And in the economic survey, the CEA attributed that to the government's nudge program. So the nudge program is for individuals to give them opportunities to revise their tax return just in case they want to, without any penalties. That has resulted in tax buoyancy on the individual side. So administrative reforms of this nature, and nudge is just one of the programs, could see more by way of an announcement, though not by way of legislation. You see, at the end of the day, what we have seen as growth in the direct tax collections, both corporate and individuals, are largely attributable to deeper administrative reforms. So I would see similar programs being laid out in the budget. On the indirect tax side, you could very well see an amnesty for customs. So it's very interesting. If you look at the trend of last 6 years, we've seen amnesty on service tax. We've seen state governments going on amnesty on the erstwhile state VAT law. We saw 2 income tax amnesty. One was driven by resolution of disputes. Second was driven by declaration. But we've not seen an amnesty in customs. And the reason behind that is that some forms of customs-related violations are scheduled offenses, say under PMLA. Some forms of valuation-related disputes land you into foreign exchange management, situation. So we have not seen a customs amnesty. I think this is an opportune time for the finance minister, having tasted success of other amnesty schemes in the previous budgets, to announce some form of a customs. And last, my favorite, rejig of custom tariffs. One, follow up to the announcements she made last year. Two, how are your customs tariff now going to see eye to eye with the free trade agreements India is signing with the UK, with the EU, and hopefully with the United States? Right now, the tariffs are not structured in a manner that it sees eye to eye with the FTAs. Because as soon as India concludes its FDA with United States, you have substantially 70-80% of cross-border trade of merchandise goods covered under free trade agreements. And that will necessitate a change in the tariff structure in the customs law.
Right, Mr. Bhutani, and it's interesting, as India, the trajectory we've had, the mother of all deals which were signed just a few days ago, and that has also restarted this conversation where the trajectory, as we can see, is just going up. But having said that, and having the headwinds and the the turmoil around tariffs and now the FTAs, how do you think that this budget is going to compare to the budget last time? And also, what are the key signals that we should be looking out for? Is this going to be a structural change, or can we expect some continuity in approach?
Well, if your reference is only changes attributable to FTA, there could be many. And I'm just guessing it now. There could be changes to the FDI regime in certain sectors. It's one thing to say that FDI is open for all forms of investments virtually, because she opened up insurance also last year. But there are certain forms of FDI that are still stuck. For example, multi-brand retailing. FDI coming in from countries that India has border states with, press note 3, because China now needs approval for FDI into India. So those forms of bottlenecks, you could see reforms in order for us to signal as a country that it's not just about FTA, but it's about FDI reforms as well. Second, you could see continuation of other forms of economic laws reform. So we saw the labor code. What is widely anticipated is major changes in the insolvency regulation as well. That's another reform that's going to appeal to a wider set of investors, but investors particularly coming from countries with which India has an FTA. And third would be the tax reforms that I spoke about. So when you mention the universe of reforms in the context of FTA, it could mean different things to different people.
Also, Mr. Bhutani, how difficult do you think it's going to be to devise a budget which promotes equity in terms of growth, given the disparity, or I would say the difference between different states and where they stand economically?
Well, there have been many initiatives. One important initiative was by the DPIIT many years back, where they said that they will rank states based on the ease of doing business and ease of living index. That's one part of it, which is a Ministry of Industry and Commerce initiative. Interestingly, there is some very important mention about states' competitiveness, even in the economic survey. So, though the economic survey, the fine prints does reveal the state deficit, I think that there would be a mechanism to work out incentivizing states which are able to attract a lot of investments, incentivizing states that are able to attract more employability. All of these measures are being thought about, discussed, but I would see a fairly formal, structured approach being put in place to incentivize states. This will result in two things. One, it will result in government trying to figure out, is there any need to give more fiscal incentives to states for growth? Could be because of location, could be because of economic stability of the state by way of tax incentives. Second could also be channelizing your resources to states that require that kind of funding for growth. And this will ensure a more equitable growth across the country. But otherwise, your favorite states for investment, particularly from an FDI perspective, are going to be Karnataka, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Haryana.
Right, Mr. Bhutani, you mentioned the economic survey, and this time the takeaway is perhaps that what we need is resilience instead of exuberance, especially at the current political climate that we're in. And having said that, what are the sectors do you think are more in need for resilience at this point, and what are the sectors in which we can see more investment going forward? We know AI is definitely the hot topic, but apart from that, what do you think are going to be the major focuses about it?
It's interesting you mentioned the word resilience. I would like, and the context to resilience, when policymakers talk about it, is all about, has India been able to withstand all the supply chain challenges, all the pressures that has come on the Indian businesses as a result of the tariffs? So that's your resilience. So I think we have gone beyond the resilience. Now the question is resilience with a long-term growth. And the long-term growth vision has already been laid out. The Viksit Bharat 2047 growth, which is India be a developed economy. So we need to sit and measure ourselves at every annual budget and every 5-year program, whether we are on that path of 2047 or not.
Keeping that path of 2047 in mind, sir, I wanted to understand, when we talk about this union budget, how much of it do you feel is going to address India's larger vision of where it wants to be 100 years from its independence, 2047? And how much of it is going to be addressing tides that exist right now, especially coming in from the US?
Well, I mean, your question is very wide. In my past over 3 years, 3 decades of observing budget, I think it's only in the last 5 years that we've started talking about vision. And I don't think that vision is merely a statement. I think now it is backed up by actionable goals that are being laid out, whether it is on FTA or otherwise. But we as a nation have to do a lot more on regulatory front. When we talk about deep reforms, we actually mean continuing reforms. So if you just look at tax, my favorite subject, which gives me my livelihood, there is a lot to be done. But at the end of the day, it depends whether you see half glass empty or half glass full.
Right, and on that note, you mentioned Viksit Bharat and our goal for 2047, but at the same time, it's also important to question how equitable this acceleration towards that growth is going to be. What do you think? How do we address this, especially in the context of India, where the allocation and the implementation takes on a completely different character when we go to tier 2 or tier 3?
So it's interesting. You again have touched a very important theme on how equitable our growth is. If you look at the total size of the economy, you look at the per capita income, it may appear that it is not an equitable growth. So it's one thing to say that we are the third largest or fourth largest economy in the world, but our per capita income is $2,000, which is 1/5 of what China is. But then that's also an opportunity, because the equitable growth means that this $2,000 gets to $12,000 to $15,000 in the next 10 years and roughly around mid $20,000 by 2047. Because the aspiration for being a Viksit Bharat by 2047 is not about being the second or the third largest economy in the world. It's about having a per capita income which is matched with the per capita income of a developed economy. And now if you look at the growth trajectory of the 70s and the 80s, whether in ASEAN or in Latin America, most nations, barring nations like Singapore and oil-rich nations like Qatar and other nations, have got stuck into what is called a middle income gap. The middle income gap is between $8,000 to $12,000 per annum. So we have a long way to go for Viksit Bharat. First, we have to move from a per capita low income country into the mid income and then to the high income category. So it's a long way path.
Mr. Bhutani, when we talk about ASEAN, and just let me, I'm kind of routing it through that now. Our FTAs, they've mostly been with the West till now. Do you think it would be wise for India to be also looking towards the East, or is the ambition of boosting domestic manufacturing keeping us from looking more towards the East, which are also hubs for production?
No, it's not correct to say that our outlook has been on FTAs with the West, because before we signed UK and Canada and EU last week, we have a FTA with New Zealand, we have an FTA with Japan, we have an FTA with ASEAN, and we have a comprehensive economic agreement with Singapore, which is of course due for renewal. So I think the only major bloc with whom we don't have a FTA is China. And, I think that would be the next big thing for India. It's going to be, a challenge to be able to sign an FTA with China, because both nations have competing
objectives. And there are opposing views on that too, if you can address it.
There are, because India is aspiring to be a manufacturing hub. China is already established. But India is equally a giant on the services side. And India has advantage of demographic dividend, English language, established judicial system. So I don't know whether the dream of having an FTA with China will be fulfilled or not, but that could be the big thing. I think India has a fairly balanced look east approach from an economic standpoint. Japan is one of the largest strategic partners for India. I anticipate that you would see increased dosage of FDI coming in from Japan. Technology transfers will happen more and more. And the whole philosophy of China plus one is going to augur well for India in the long run. So I think India is doing a fairly balanced economic, diplomatic job of making sure that its economy stays resilient, to the point that that your colleague made a while ago.
Mr. Bhutani, also economically speaking, I would like you to touch upon India's evolving role in the changing economic world order, and also this multipolar world order towards which we're inclining now. And given with everything that's happened in the last few months and also the last 12 months, The economic realities, would you say they've changed drastically, which need to be addressed at this particular juncture, or a continuity would suffice for now?
Economic realities have changed drastically. I was in one of the groupings where a chairman of a blue-blooded consulting firm mentioned that what we are seeing now is something that even for strategic consulting firms like us, it's difficult to advise our clients what next. This is very different than the tectonic changes, economic changes the world saw in the 2008 financial crisis or in the COVID crisis of 2020. And the challenge is you don't know what's going to come next. Hopefully, I mean, this is going to make us far more resilient as a world economy. And it is certainly going to make sure that it is going to make us as a nation far more resilient. I mean, if numbers speak for itself, what we predicted as 6.5% growth and now we are in 7% is itself an answer. But it's not going to be a year-on-year growth trajectory. It's going to be a medium to long-term growth strategy. And the World Bank and IMF coming out with 7+% growth rate for 26 and 27 for India, I think augurs very well. So it's a combination of many factors. Political stability, continuity of policies, getting into deeper reforms, structural as well as market reforms are very critical.
Mr. Bhutani, stay with us. Of course, you're right here with us in the studios. We'll just cut across to some reactions.
Well, reactions have been coming in from the upcoming budget session, and this is what you need to keep an eye out for. Take a look.
It will be a historic budget. The PM's Reform Express will move forward speedily towards Viksit Bharat. India budget is seen by the world now to know what will happen.
The Union Ministry will present the budget today. The budget should present the vision of the government. But for the past few years, we have seen that the budget is detached from the ground reality.